How's everybody doing tonight?
Oh,
Good. I'm super happy that we're back here at Mantra House. I just look forward to it every Thursday, just to be here. Let me just fix this really quick. So, some of you guys might have seen the flyer that we made on our social medias and emails. And so I titled today's talk, Removing the Veil of Illusion. It's uncovering the greatest lie that's ever been told. And so I came up with it. I was thinking the whole week, like, what am I going to speak about at Mantra House? And just gradually, just because somehow or other I'm a huge procrastinator, so gradually towards the last few minutes I was putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And so I came up with that title. And so to start off, the greatest lie that's ever been told, as we all know, is Santa Claus. No, that's my talk right there. I'm just joking. So on a more serious note, I want to start today's talk with a story. This story that I'm about to say took place when I was 11 years old. I was at a phase in my life where somehow or other I had become a compulsive liar. I would just literally lie about everything. I would lie to my friends, I would lie to my family, I would lie to everyone actually. And I would lie about everything, like my name, where I was from, where I was born. It was the weird mind of a 11-year-old. And so I was starting to become like a little 11-year-old compulsive liar. And yeah. And so that particular event that happened to me in my life sparked something in me. And it made me realize something that I'll never forget. So it all started on a Saturday night. And my parents had invited their friends over for a dinner and a movie. And so naturally, as my parents, they're a bit social, especially my dad. He brought his friends over, his friend and his wife, and they were just eating and drinking. And so my brothers and my sister were not really like into speaking to elders. So we were just in our room. They were stuck to the TV. I was just out in the room, and as soon as we go in the room, we started playing, I think it was like Nickelodeon. We were watching like All That or something. And then they were just stuck to the TV. So at the time, as an 11-year-old, I started to have a peak interest in skateboarding. It was ultimately my goal at the age of 11 was to become a skateboarder. That's literally all I thought about. That was my goal in life. And so for starters, I had this fake, cheap Ninja Turtle skateboard that my parents had gotten for me at Target. It's like super thick wood, super just like fake everything, fake bearings. And you couldn't even spin the wheel that much. Like you were spinning and it would stop like halfway. And so at that time I was just super excited. The rug in my room was really soft. So I decided that I was just gonna practice my shove-its. And so to show you guys what a shove-it is, if you guys don't know, you pretty much just have the board and you just shift it like that. Just on the board. So I just kept practicing. I kept shifting the board, just kept trying. I became completely absorbed. You know, you're a little kid, you have this new toy. And so you just kept trying and trying. And so I started going crazy because instead of a 180 spin, I started doing like a 360 spin. Just like spinning it. And so I started to feel in my own mind, I was like, dude, I feel like Tony Hawk. Like I'm about to be pro or something. And so then after a while I decided, okay, let me try an ollie because the shove-it is pretty easy. You don't have to like pop the board. So with the ollie, that's the one that you get levitation. So I was like popping the board, just kept popping it up and down. And I kept trying, and at this point I was already sweating. And my brothers were just stuck in the TV, like they could care less what I was doing. But I kept trying and trying. When all of a sudden, towards this last pop that I made, I popped it so hard that after that it was just like a flash. I'm popping the board, and next thing you know, I just see it go boom, just straight into my mouth. And at this point, I was in shock. Just immediately, the first thing that I do is that I put my hand towards my mouth, and I look at my siblings to see their reaction. And they didn't even notice. They were completely frozen to the TV. As soon as I realized that, I ran to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and I smiled, and miraculously my front tooth was still there. But immediately, as soon as I touched it, it just created this crazy pain that it's hard for me to explain even to this day. It's just horrible, agonizing pain. As soon as I would touch it, it was super crazy. So I wasn't going to tell my parents, because first of all, they didn't really want me to be a skateboarder. They knew it was dangerous, and they had an idea that if I started skating that I was going to break a leg or something. So the first thing, I get a skateboard and pretty much fractured my front tooth. And I knew that if I told them, it would have ruined my whole future in terms of my skateboarding career. So I kept them to myself. I didn't say a word that night. And remember how I told you guys that we were having a movie night that day. And so when it was time for us to watch the movie, at first my original plan was just to get the best seat in the house. I thought I was just going to sit back and relax, but nah, that wasn't going to happen. Like, out of nervousness and worry, I literally sat in the worst possible seat in the whole house. Like, next to the TV, like the edge of the couch. Just pretty much the TV's right here, and I'm just sitting there. And so, actually the movie that we were watching was The Day After Tomorrow. Have you guys heard about that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the movie was pretty good. So I remember as an 11-year-old, for the most part, although my tooth is like, I feel like it's about to fall off, but for the most part I was absorbed in the movie. I was just, you ever been in a movie where you just lose yourself? Yeah. Just like completely immerse yourself? Yeah, so as an 11-year-old I remember being absorbed. But once the credits hit, it was like reality just struck. You know, once the credits hits, it's back to the real world. And so I was thinking to myself, like, dude, like, what the heck just happened? Like, literally, I felt that I had either, I don't even know, it was just horrible pain. I felt like my tooth was about to fall off, the front one. And after thinking for some time, internally, I immediately connected this experience towards the incident of me lying all the time. I felt like because of so much lying that I was doing, I had gotten this negative reaction directly to my mouth, where all my lies were coming out of. And so this is when I uncovered for the first time ever the concept of karma. But nonetheless, I thought to myself, let me just sleep now, and when I wake up in the morning, like, the whole nightmare is going to disappear. So I just gently brushed my teeth, and then I just went to sleep. And so the next morning I wake up and I check on my tooth, and it was the same pain, probably even worse. And so it was this most excruciating pain that you can think of in terms of your teeth. It was almost like if you guys have taken out your wisdom teeth, and then you wait for some time, and it's just like excruciating pain until you take meds. Well, I had that pain like confined on my front tooth. It was crazy. And so keep in mind that it was my adult teeth. It wasn't like the baby teeth that, oh, I lost it or I'll grow another one. It was like the real ones, the real deal. But anyways, I told my mom what had happened, and to my surprise, she was pretty supportive. I thought she was going to flip out and ban me from ever skateboarding, but she acted pretty cool about it. So at this point, I thought to myself, okay, this is probably just going to be a 2-week ordeal. Like, it's just going to be 2 weeks. I got to be careful. I just got to let it heal naturally. But to my surprise, that 2-week ordeal became a 2-year nightmare. 2 years, I couldn't even drink hot water or cold water. It had to be just a perfect room temperature, because as soon as I would drink something hot or cold, it was just this horrible pain. It's like indescribable pain on the nerve of my tooth. And not only that, but throughout those 2 years of my life, not a day went by that I didn't think about my front tooth. Not a day went by where I was like touching it, just making sure that it wasn't about to fall off. Even right now, just thinking about it, like, it's like starting to hurt. So I was beginning to think that I was gonna be toothless as an 11-year-old. You know, it just became like a nightmare. Like sometimes people have nightmares that they lose their teeth, and it's like pretty scary up until the point that you wake up. But I was having that as an 11-year-old in real life, and so literally that event impacted my whole life, even to the point of enjoyment. So bad that I couldn't eat with my front teeth. Every time that I ate, I had to rip up the food and just chew it out in the back, because I couldn't even bite an apple, because I felt like the tooth was gonna just get stuck to the apple. So this incident made me realize something, that according to my experience, I saw it as a reaction to my action. Ultimately, I saw it as a sign that I should stop lying, and I felt like I couldn't lie anymore, that this was it, I had gotten this effect. And this particular event influenced me so much that it started to carve out a path for me, where progressively as I got older, I knew that rather than living a lie, that I was going to dedicate myself to seeking truth. And so I knew that my life was going to be meant for truth seeking, but obviously in middle school, that propensity to seek truth didn't manifest. It didn't even manifest in high school. For me, it manifested after high school, during my first year of college. And gradually, through my explorations of truth seeking, within my own experience, I gradually felt like I was beginning to uncover like the illusions of the world. And it started off by me beginning to question, just to question life in general, like, what does it all mean? Why are we here? And so, asking these questions, the first thing that I started realizing was that the type of civilization that we were living in. I began to question the modern dealings of civilization within my own mind, as if it was part of the illusion, because it just didn't make sense. Further along, after digging deeper within myself, and especially after my explorations with cannabis, I began to uncover the illusion of self-centeredness. There was a point in my life where I would just get stoned out of my mind. I would just be driving in the highway, just listening to like meditation music, like sounds like angelic hymns. And literally I felt like I was the center of the universe. I felt like I was the all in all. Like everything was made for me. But gradually through spiritual experience and knowledge over time, I felt like eventually I overcame that grand scale of illusion. I became humbled by knowledge, pretty much. And gradually, after some time, I overcame the illusion of meat eating, the eating of flesh of other animals, of other living entities, just for the sake of taste. And so that whole process of me realizing that these were illusions, I realized something extremely important within my whole pursuance of truth seeking, which actually became a landmark in my life, and it's still engraved in my mind to this day. And so I realized that in order to unveil the illusion, in order to uncover the greatest lie that has ever been told, we must first dive deep into the ocean of spiritual knowledge. And so I want to start off with this point, that sometimes coming out of the illusion is not easy. It's definitely not an easy thing. As a matter of fact, there's so many different layers of illusion. There's so many aspects of illusion that we cannot even uncover until the moment of death, such as the illusion of gender, the illusion of the body. My point is that spirituality is not an easy thing. It's a life of simplicity. You live a simple life, but it's definitely not easy. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice. There's always a lot of sacrifice that have to happen in order for one to experience spiritual realization. Now, it's definitely a joyful path, but like I said, it's not easy. As you guys come to Mantra House, we experience a lot of joy. I experienced a lot of joy last Thursday because Salsa Sarati Sham, just led an amazing kirtan, roaring kirtan, which just brought a lot of joy in the atmosphere. And so I started thinking, I started brainstorming, comparing a spiritualist. I was trying to think, what can we compare spirituality to? And so I came with this conclusion, that we can compare the life of a spiritualist to the life of an entrepreneur. Being that the life of an entrepreneur is literally a life of sacrifice. Sometimes you gotta wake up early in the morning, sacrificing sleep, putting so much effort to build a company, sometimes even multi-level companies. Maybe you guys have heard of Elon Musk. He's pretty insane. He's creating $1 million companies and just working 7 days out of the week. And so the entrepreneur is putting so much effort in his time, so much sacrifice, reading so many books to become financially sustainable, obtaining so much knowledge to become an expert in the field that he's dedicating in order to make something out of nothing. So similarly, the life of a spiritualist is almost the same, externally speaking. Although internally, we tend to relish a lot of joy, a lot of good association, a lot of amazing positive things. But externally, to me, at least to my experience, it's definitely a life of sacrifice. For example, in order to get people to come to Mantra House, we make a lot of endeavors. To summarize it, we go out to a lot of universities, a lot of college campuses, a lot of different areas around LA, and we sacrifice our time and energy just inviting people to come to Mantra House, giving and selling meditation books to UCLA, SMC, Cal State Long Beach, Cal State North, just all these different universities. And so we're stopping people constantly, and at the same time, we're constantly getting rejected. And usually the exchange goes something like this, because sometimes we have a book table, and sometimes, majority of the time, we have to stop people. And so for the most part, you'll just see a couple of us with a stack of books in our hand, and we're just trying to stop people like, hey, what's up? Like, what's your major? And majority of the time, people are like, no, I'm good, bro. I'm good. They just pass by you and they ignore your whole existence. Like, you're trying to stop them and they just like walk straight forward. And even when you go to the other side of the world, like New Zealand, it's the same thing. Like, if you're trying to stop people, but it's just in a different accent. Like, I was there last year and I was trying to stop people like, hey, what's up? And all you would hear was like, busy. Like, hey, where are you from? Busy. And so I was just like, forget about it. These people are not going to stop. But on the truly relishable side, the majority of the time you meet a lot of cool people where they're just happy that you're there, and then they tell you like, thank you for doing this. It's truly amazing that you guys are here. It's they're like, man, we should have more of this. And they walk away, what gives a smile to our faces. Not only do they walk away with a stack of books in their hand, but most of the time they come to Mantra House. And so some people are here tonight because of books. Like, I could think of Nimra, who we met at UCLA maybe like 8 months ago. And now she's here at Mantra House and she's taking part of the staff, which is pretty amazing. And so it's definitely truly relishable. Once you put not only effort, sometimes it just comes, the relish just comes. And so ultimately we can ask ourselves, what can keep us motivated to stick to a spiritual path? For me particularly, to my experience, it was knowledge. And I started realizing that the knowledge runs contrary to the whole of the masses. That I became addicted to knowledge that went the opposite direction. Like, the whole of the masses were going this direction, and I was into the knowledge that was telling me to go the opposite direction, to go upstream, to swim upstream and go directly to the source. So I became knowledge that captivated me, that according to my eye, it transcended the norms of society. And so we're seeing quite often now that this knowledge definitely can transform the world. Sometimes simply by a book, people just by reading a sentence or a paragraph or even the whole book, they immediately decide that they want to become vegetarian or they want to take up to a spiritual practice. And so doing something like that, it makes a powerful impact, just changing our diet alone. But what does this knowledge tell us about the metaphysical point of view of the greatest lie ever told? What does this knowledge truly tell us about just going beyond the body? It tells us that the number one illusion is to think that we are the body, that that's who we are, and that ultimately our full identification, our whole essence of being is just a body, like I'm male or I'm female, I'm from this country, I'm from that country. And if we think that we're fully absorbed, that this is who we are, then it's explained in the ancient knowledge that that's a number one illusion. And so reading this allowed me to realize that to a grand scale, human society has manufactured an artificial civilization which blinds us from the spiritual identity of the self, that deviates from inquiring about the self, that deviates us from taking the path of self-realization. We see it everywhere. We turn on our phones, our TV, we go to school. Rarely do we get inspired to pursue a spiritual path. So it's explained in one of the main books, Bhagavad Gita, that on the metaphysical point of view, that there's one very dangerous type of fear. And that fear is to lose a human form of life. In other words, the most dangerous type of fear is to reincarnate into lower species of life, being that according to the ancient text, the human body is considered to be the crown jewel for attaining spiritual realization. So it's explained that is the most dangerous type of fear. So what does that tell us about the greatest lie that's being told to us? So the greatest lie ever told to us is that the human body is purely meant for material sense gratification, that it's purely meant to gratify the senses. And so it's explained that that's the greatest lie that we're being told. This great lie has created so many problems for the human race, in which we can clearly see today, from wars of profit, corrupted leadership, environmental destruction, so many atrocities that you can just keep digging and digging. So ultimately, everything is explained in these spiritual books, and the spiritual books of metaphysics. Such as we have the book Bhagavad Gita, we find Arjuna, one of the main characters in the book, who's finding himself in illusion, who's finding himself entangled in the illusion because he's thinking that he's a body. And so Krishna, which is the other main character who he's speaking to Arjuna, he's considered to be the supreme reservoir of knowledge, and he dispels the illusion. And so gradually, as we make the sacrifice, because it takes some sacrifice to open the book sometimes. I find it even myself. Like reading in 2 hours a day or even an hour a day, sometimes it's like lifting weights trying to get the book and read it. But once you actually immerse yourself in these books, it's like there's no stopping. It's like constant relishment of the mind. And so it takes a sacrifice. It takes some effort to open these books. Sometimes you get intimidated because they're pretty thick. But gradually, as you make that effort, you get a result and you get to see for yourself what this knowledge is all about. So with this metaphysical points of view, sometimes it makes us feel uncomfortable to talk about these things. Such as this point that philosophically speaking, the whole purpose of philosophy and knowledge is to understand death. Like, why do we have to die? And so it's explained that the whole purpose of philosophy is to answer this question, like, why do we have to die? Why does it have to end? And so sometimes we can feel uncomfortable listening to these things. We may even feel depressed. And so the majority of the time, a lot of people, they run away from these things. But ultimately, I want to say that you guys don't need to worry. You guys don't need to worry about that, because every single individual here, every single person in this room, every single person listening on the live feed or watching this online, we're gradually, collectively endeavoring for spiritual realization, knowingly and unknowingly. That's why we're here for Mantra House. That's why we come together. We try to build this community. We try to create this environment where we can actually flourish both spiritually and materially, because there's so many people from different walks of life that come here. Just sitting in this room, we have many artists, We have a lot of engineers, we have a lot of students, up and coming entrepreneurs. Like I could think of Risen. I get inspired every time that I see his post online, because he's just out there just hustling, and he's infusing his spiritual consciousness with it. Also, we have chefs in the house. I don't think Marvin's here, but he's putting in a lot of effort, like starting his own business, just cooking day in and day out, and going out to different places. And so there's so many talents, so many varieties. So when we come to Mantra House, not only are we cultivating spiritual knowledge, but we're cultivating spiritual experiences. And we're doing this collectively, we're doing this together. And so we're definitely already in the right direction, and we're already beginning to uncover illusion, because we're endeavoring to nurture the self. And I'm personally myself, I'm super thankful for this type of environment. And so like one of my teachers said one time, he said that Mantra House is a wake-up center. It's definitely a sanctuary. And for now, as you guys know, we're just meeting once a week. But I'll tell you guys this much, that we're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that eventually we can have a facility that runs more than just once a day. We're trying to have these every day if possible. Maybe not in the same style as a Mantra House. I mean, Mantra House is Mantra House, but maybe not the same style as Thursday night, but we can have varieties of things on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And so it's definitely going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice that's going to go into that, but like I said, it's going to be relishable. It's going to be an amazing experience. And definitely we're here to help one another. And so I like to think of this metaphor that was brought up on last week's talk, that in order to unveil the illusion, we have to dive deep. We have to dive deep in spiritual knowledge, because the spiritual experience is filled with so many things. It's like an array of experiences. It comes with amazing association, amazing food, amazing people, a lot of positive energy, extremely positive energy, a lot of inspiration, a lot of connections. And so we have to dive deep. We actually have to make that sacrifice. Ultimately, we have to take the path that's less taken, so that the waves of illusion, because if we think that, if we see that the ocean of spiritual knowledge, it's an ocean, so gradually you have waves that ripple on the shores. And so, to me, I like to consider the waves as illusions that tell us not to go deep, that will tumble us down so that we won't go deep into the knowledge. And so the waves of illusion can be compared to the artificial corporate center civilizations, or the waves of illusion that spring up a lot of unwanted qualities in us, such as like selfishness, greed, envy, hatred. The waves of illusion that influence us to disregard other living species and just consider them like palatable dishes. And ultimately the waves of illusion that tell us like, no, don't dive deep into that ocean. Just stay here in the shore, just create a beautiful sandcastle right here in the shore. Just take your time. You have all the time in the world. Just create this beautiful sandcastle. Just stay here where it's nice, it's warm, it's cozy. And just build the sandcastle, man. Just don't worry about the ocean. Until gradually, the waves of time just come and just destroy that castle that we created within material consciousness. And so I want to end my talk here. I'm super thankful for each and every one of you guys for being here. And perhaps we could end the night with maybe a question or two. And thank you guys very much.
I just want to thank you, HB, for being present, for sharing your insights, your love. The story that really resonated a lot deeply, especially from your childhood to now. So I want to just thank you and get one more round of applause for HB. I have a question for you. So one of my greatest challenges is, as we all kind of gain these insights, these even you could call them satori moments of just like, wow, unlifting the veil of the illusion of life. But one of my greatest challenges then is being present of that awareness. Is, so I say, staying risen in that state of just clarity, of knowing who the real self is. Because I feel like it's easy for me to also get lost in the illusion, especially your association is your vibration. So my family, sometimes hanging out with certain people, I get kind of caught up in their energies. So my question to you is, how do you keep yourself in that state of awareness? I know you mentioned a little bit just about reading and all this stuff, but I wanted to dive a little deeper into how do you stay risen every day, man?
Well, I'm definitely not as risen as you. But for me, I just, like you mentioned it yourself, association is super key. And so at my house, all my roommates are at least aspiring to practice the spiritual path. And so I try to keep my not my circle, but just my influence of people just very tight-knit so that we can just cultivate knowledge and share knowledge. The other thing is that gradually, like I was saying, a lot of us have talents. And so eventually, one of my talents, I don't even know if it's a talent, but I always like to organize things ever since I was like 19. And so I had this idea because I had came to a similar event like this when I first started coming when I was 19. So I thought like we should start one of these again. And so for me it's a matter of utilizing my talents, the things that I like to do, but just dovetailing them towards like spiritual knowledge. For example, if I want to start a business, I can dedicate a lot of time and a lot of effort to start the business, but ultimately I know because I want to cultivate myself spiritually and help others, that I would like to use those profits to create centers like this. And that just brings a lot of joy, it brings a lot of happiness, and it makes that effort worthwhile. So I feel like you're already doing that, and yeah, man, stay risen.
Thank you for that reflection.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes?
I would like to know the spirituality. Description of spirituality is one description for all of the world and everybody, or is different for different people, different group? If it's different, what is common base between all of those? Does it have a universal description of spirituality or different description? For different group, is different or is the same?
To my experience, and from what I read, is that it's all the same. It's ultimately because so many people, not only on this planet, but across the whole universe, we're composed of certain natures. And so that's what makes the beauty of life, is that there's so much diversity. So it would be a bit boring if there was just one spiritual path. And so the beauty about it is because there's so many people from different walks of life with so many different experiences, so many different karmas, and therefore there's a variety of spiritual paths that ultimately will lead to that same destination, which is love. And that's just the way that I like to see it, especially since prior to me coming to spirituality, I wasn't really interested in like a spiritual path. But once I started reading the books and experiencing them, I started to realize that it seems like we're all connected. Regardless if somebody's practicing a different form of spirituality in the other side of the world, ultimately it's all the same principle, that we're spirit, that we're Atman. And yeah, that's the best possible way that I could answer the question right now. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I want to give just one last big shout out to Christian and Patsy, they're actually leaving to New Zealand. This is their last day here. They're leaving to New Zealand just for 3 weeks. They're going to a yoga retreat, and super thankful for both of them. Christian's always outside, just tolerating the cold. We're definitely gonna miss them, and just for like a quick message, I've been going to these retreats the past 3 years in New Zealand. This year I'm not going, but next year, or this coming year, we're gonna try to organize a retreat where we could actually organize from the very beginning of the year, where we can go to New Zealand and experience like Bhakti yoga over there. So we're trying to get together and organize something like that for the future. But thank you guys.
Thank you, HP. Before we go into more kirtan, can everybody get up, stretch a little bit more, but then move forward also, so we can make more space for everybody else.